Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today are sponsored, including Farhan, standing by, sponsored by Basant Motors. Due to popular demand, Basant Motors is continuing their 31st anniversary celebrations. Check out BasantMotors.com to see all the great deals. Learn more at BASANTMotors.com. Happy to have them aboard. Just before we get to Farhan, Ron in Saanich, of course, Czech located in Victoria.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
Saanich right next door, in case you're not familiar with that.
I am. I love Saanich.
Ron texting into Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. We missed, and we being the Canucks missed Tyler Myers, no matter what people say, that big reach is needed on the PK.
Big time.
A lot of people would agree with that.
It's a great,
as much as Tyler Myers tends to be a target for fans and media in this market.
Long reach. Him and Amon have the two longest reaches on the team.
Do you know that for a fact? Are we going down the Matt Sakara's wingspan area here?
Yeah, no.
Farhan Lalji joining us now from TSN. Lions, by the way, hosting Winnipeg on Saturday. Farhan, how are you, sir?
I'm good. And listen, Rick is always going to defend Tyler Myers. You know why? Because Rick is personally responsible for probably an extra $500,000 a year on Myers' salary. That is the power of Rick Dollywall. That's why. But I do agree with you. I think Myers was missed last night. I think
he was missed last night.
You can't deny, whether you think he's worth $6 million a year or not, you can't deny the amount of minutes he plays.
Yes.
And the impact that he has, right? I mean, slightly overpaid maybe, but valuable player nonetheless.
Yeah, a lot of people have a hard time taking $6 million a year out of the equation, but you've got Travis Green, Bruce Boudreau.
It's all Rick's fault.
Coaches, they use them a lot, and it is all Rick's fault.
JP Barry, good agent. He got him the money.
Rick's fault.
Yeah.
Rick's fault.
What was your takeaway from last night's loss? Canucks loss, Farhan blowing a 3-0 lead.
Yeah, a lot to like in the first half of the game, and then kind of a lot not to like, and some really good things. I liked Elias Pettersson's performance. I liked Kuzmenko, obviously. There were some other pieces that stood out and I thought did some really good things. But then I saw some structural issues in the third period that you'd hope not to see. I saw Quinn Hughes, who was dynamic offensively, but defensively he looked like Hughes from 2 years ago, not the much improved defensive Hughes that we saw a year ago. JT Miller did some, exciting things offensively, but also turned the puck over at times, wound up on McDavid's stick behind the net at one point. So there's still a bit of that. I think it's going to take some time. I think it's easy to park it as game one. Egregious missed call that changed the game because they go down and score and make it 3-1 later while Quinn Hughes is like bleeding all over the place. And so that was bad. But at the same time, you're 1 for 8 on the power play and you give up a shorthanded goal. So simply not good enough. So kind of a mixed bag going into this. I mean, even Thatcher Demko, I thought could have been better.
Okay, one game, but it's hard to talk playoffs at this point. I think I've got that right. But your prediction on Twitter, 97 points in a playoff spot. Forget last night for a second. What makes you optimistic about the Canucks?
Well, I just think that they are better than they were a year ago, right? I mean, the defense is kind of the same. I mean, which is suspect. Bottom half of the league, right? I mean, not bottom of the league, but bottom half of the league. But their forward group got better when healthy, right? So I want to see what happens when Mikheyev gets back. I think Kuzmenko was a lot to build on that first performance and to like. So I just think that up front they're better, but ultimately it's going to come down to health. When you look at the top end of the lineup, I expect Miller to be kind of a high 80s points guy as opposed to a 99-point guy. And I think Pettersson has got to be in the 90s, right? I mean, he's got to take that next step now in year 4 to show that this guy's trending to be one of the top players in the league. And he's, I loved what I saw in the second half of last year, loved what I saw in training camp in the preseason, and really liked what I saw last night. So if you can get some better performances and some healthier bodies, which, in health, there's just no way of predicting. So for me, with that being the caveat, if they can stay healthy, I don't see why they can't have more points than they had a year ago and get to that 97, 98 mark and get into the playoffs.
Bo Horvat, Farhan, a lot of criticism last night on social media, in general last night. Why do you think that is? He's coming off a pretty successful season.
It's a good question. And I think the Miller Horvat thing has become a debate, right, on a lot of levels. And it began last year with the question of leadership and, who really is the alpha in the room. And then they had to go through the contract situation this offseason. They got Miller done and they didn't get Horvat done. So for whatever reason, one of the best people in the Canucks organization in Bo Horvat, for whatever reason, gets criticized. Now, he doesn't get criticized to the level of some others, but probably criticized more than he should, because you're going to get that part of the market that's going to say, oh, this part of the market likes him too much because he's a good guy, and he's a leader and all of those things. And for me, those things matter, right? Like the fact that you can be a high character individual that is somebody you can count on and just gives you a consistency of effort every night. I think that's a positive thing, whereas for some, they think that's not enough. And like I said, for whatever reason, Miller Horvat has become polarizing.
Farhan, Lions, Blue Bombers, a good test for British Columbia this weekend. Nathan Rourke, so I talked to Neil McAvoy, the GM, yesterday. There's a chance that we could see him back. I think he's going to go back on the 6th game, but you can take him off at any time. But anyways, Nathan Rourke getting closer. I mean, you think he can pull it off and come back?
If anybody can, I think Nathan can, but I still think it's a long shot, right?
Okay.
So I've had people around the league come to me and say, oh, this is crazy that you're even talking about it. And I said, I'm not talking about him as a slam dunk.
He's on practice. He's at practice.
Yeah, it's not fantasy, but I still think it's a long shot. If I had to gauge, 50-50 is the best. And if I was betting, I'd probably say no. But again, it's possible. So having spoken to the people around it, he is working his tail off to get back. Yesterday, he just took part in individual periods of practice. That doesn't mean he's close to doing 7-on-7 or team at any point. You could see he was tentative in terms of how he was moving his feet, as he should at this stage of the game. So, I just feel like we're going to run out of runway at some point. That if we had 2 more weeks, it would make a big, big difference, right?
Yeah.
So, in a best case, that final game of the regular season, he's in uniform. He has 1 or 2 series just to knock the rust off, and he starts in the Western semifinal against Calgary at home. But I think it's a long shot.
Well, look ahead to the playoffs. Obviously, they're going to meet Calgary in the opener. Winnipeg's the team to beat, and not just in the West, the whole entire league. But what have the Lions got to be doing right in these last 3 weeks to beat the Stampeders?
You got to get Nathan Rourke back. After just saying it's going to be a long shot. Look, they've got to shore up in a couple of areas. Number one, they've got to get their offensive line and their quarterback on the same page. And I say that because, I do think that the offensive line improved a lot, but I also think Nathan Rourke made them better and made them look better. And now we're kind of seeing a bit of regression, and that regression comes with a quarterback that might not be as consistent and not be as consistent in terms of pulling the trigger when it needs to get pulled. You hang on a little bit longer, and now it becomes more difficult for the offensive line. So they've got to get better there, but also defensively, right? And it's easy to play defense when your team is way out in front and the teams have got to throw the ball and things like that. So run game's got to improve, but even in the secondary, I think there's some tightening up that needs to occur. I think Marcus Sales has been really ordinary, and that's not just because he gave up the 1 late touchdown. I just think that's been a case all season that we probably haven't talked about it enough. So Stove Richardson, if they can get him back, that will shore up their run game, I believe, but they also need to tighten up at the back end. So there's a lot of areas they need to just get 5% better. I don't think this team is bad in an area, maybe in their coverage teams, but there's a few areas if they can just get 5% better, I think it'll be enough to be trading punches with Calgary in the 4th quarter of that game.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, Farhan, what constitutes roughing the passer in the National Football League?
Nonsense, right? I think there's such an overreaction to what happened with Tua, the problem that happened with Tua was the medical part. Not what happened on the field, it was the medical part, right? And now that's being carried over to what's happening in the field. That roughing the passer against Tom Brady, and there was one previously in the Kansas City game the week before that was just awful, awful calls. I think they need to put review into it, like you do in college with targeting. When it comes to roughing the passer, I think and even in the CFL, you can't bring eye in the sky into adding a penalty or doing review unless it involves quarterbacks. Tweak it here. Something like that happens, you should be able to challenge it. It should be reviewable because you can't put flags on these quarterbacks. I get protecting them, but it's still tackle football.
Yeah, I'm with you, Fran. I think what happened with Brady had everything to do with what happened to Tua. Thanks so much for this. Where's the mug, by the way?
Yeah,
The Donnie and Dolly
the
mug.
mug?
There it is. Okay.
Come on. Next time, I'll just sip out of it during the entire segment. Is that good? We'll just do that?
Let's do that. That's a deal. We'll hold you to that. Farhan, thanks for this.
All right. See you guys.
Farhan Lalji, TSN.